Just after 8 o'clock, let's take you over to Bloemfontein now, where Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's bid to have her arrest declared illegal is going to be heard today. It's an urgent application. It was postponed, though, after the Home Affairs Department had joined the case as respondent number 6. Senior reporter Silindelo Masikane, let's come back to you in Bloemfontein as well. Earlier on, hearing from one of our regular legal eagles, saying it's actually quite a technical issue they're trying to deal with, because from what I was picking up, and tell me if you agree with my interpretation of it, this is all about jurisdiction between the South African authorities and the Tanzanian authorities and how it actually played out on the day.
Absolutely. So we've got two versions of events where Home Affairs claims that all legal processes were followed, that this was a legal deportation of Dr. Nandipha from Tanzania. And we have Dr. Nandipha claiming that, no, in fact, I was kidnapped, I was abducted by the South African Police Services. She goes as far as saying that she was blindfolded before she boarded a chartered plane at the Kilimanjaro airport. But to unpack the legal proceedings that we're going to see today, I am joined by legal expert Mr. Riaz Hamri. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's start with the responding papers. We know what Dr. Nandipha is claiming. We have seen or saw sight of the Home Affairs response in terms of basically calling her a liar and saying that her version of events just never transpired. But what is interesting is that there is an admittance that they were members of the SAPS, but to merely observe the deportation process. Is this normal?
Morning, ma'am. Thank you very much for having me. In the circumstances, from what we see in the answering affidavit or the replying affidavit from the sixth respondent, I would say it's normal, because we were dealing, or they were, the situation was such that they were dealing with a fugitive in Thabo Bester having escaped, and that's the allegation that was made at the time, and Dr. Nandipha Magudumana having aided and abetted. That's the allegation. So from the side, it's clear from the replying affidavit that the reason why SAPS was asked to be present was from a protection point of view and a security point of view based on who they were dealing with. So yes, I don't see anything abnormal under the circumstances, and it's clear from the replying affidavit that SAPS only played that part. So the allegation of SAPS members having abducted Dr. Magudumana and having blindfolded her is blatantly denied, and there is supporting documentation attached to the replying affidavit to show that due process was indeed followed. On the face of it, that's what we see in the replying affidavit.
Now, there's also an allegation to say that Dr. Nandipha isn't being honest with the court, that she is bringing an application based on a calculated lie. Do you think it's going to work against her, the fact that she doesn't tell the court just how she ended up in Tanzania?
Indeed, it should play a huge part, because once an individual approaches a court, an individual needs to take the court into confidence. And from what we're seeing in the replying affidavit, like I mentioned previously as well, her founding affidavit seems to be vague. So she doesn't include in her founding affidavits her circumstances of how she ended up in Tanzania, and that's fact right now. Nowhere in her papers is that mentioned, besides the allegation of being abducted. And we see now from the replying affidavit, and it supports also what has filtered through media reports from the word go, in terms of the apprehension of Thabo Bester and Dr. Magudumana, including Dr. Mutsoaledi's media statement in last week. Whatever is included in their replying affidavits with supporting documentation supports what's been recorded in the media from the word go.
Then let's talk about that notice that's attached in the responding papers by Home Affairs, declaring Bester and Magudumana as undesirable immigrants. It does seem as though, in terms of what's said in the papers, that if Dr. Nandipha actually wants to challenge that notice, she's going to have to challenge that notice in Tanzania, because the South African courts don't have jurisdiction. Do you agree?
Look, she's brought the application here in front of this High Court. So at this present moment, this is where the application is lying. Now, it's for this court to decide whether the process was not followed. I feel the court does have jurisdiction to hear the application. If it is found that the process was not followed at all and she's successful, then that leads to another version of events altogether. However, based on whatever has been placed in the replying affidavits of all respondents, especially the sixth respondent, due process was followed. There's a bare denial of her allegations, and they have supporting documentation to show such, including that notice. Although 3 days was given, the notice is quite clear that she needed to be accompanied out of the country, and that's what happened. Once the information was received by the High Commissioner, action was taken. The government, locally, Department of Home Affairs, including immigration officials, were informed of it, and that's what transpired. It's clear from the papers that the moment the information was received from the authorities in Tanzania, the South African High Commissioner in Tanzania took action, held a meeting, sent an individual out to Arusha to confirm the identification of the individuals that had been apprehended, and that's what's playing out here now. It is a total turn of events from the initial founding affidavit to what we're seeing now in a reply. And remember, she's brought this application on an urgent basis, so what we're seeing now of the sixth respondent being added and the answers that's been given to the reply to her founding affidavit adds more meat to what's happening. My last comment in last week was that her application seems to be vague, and I think what we're seeing coming out and coming through the replying affidavit points in that direction as well. It seems on the face of it that she's not taking the court into confidence.
Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, ma'am.
All right, that is legal expert Mr. Riaz Hanmari, just unpacking in terms of the arguments we are expecting to be heard this morning, just after 9:30, and of course it's going to be interesting, in essence, which version of events the Free State High Court is going to go with, and of course we do know that it's going to be urgency that is argued first before we get into the merits of the application.
All right, so just over an hour from now, an hour and 20 minutes when that all gets underway, we're back to Silindelo Masikane out in Bloemfontein for us. I'm sure we'll have it live here on eNCA. Another look ahead just after 9 o'clock this morning. And on Twitter, by the way, you can follow Slee. She's very quick on the tweets as well to see what's happening inside court this morning.